Millions of people are about to be boarding airplanes and traveling for Thanksgiving and for Christmas. For many, traveling and going on vacations is often something they look forward to and have marked on their calendars. But for some of us, the process of getting on an airplane can be filled with anxiety and panic. So if you get anxiety or panic attacks on airplanes, you are far from alone. That's why in today's episode, we're going to talk about why you get anxiety on airplanes and what you can do to stop it so you can enjoy your vacation. Let's jump in. Anxiety or panic on an airplane can feel uniquely intense. And I know this because I personally experienced it myself when I was suffering from anxiety. For most people, here's what happens. As you take your seat and the crew prepares the cabin for departure, you begin to be bombarded by anxious thoughts. You might start worrying about having a medical emergency while you're 30,000 feet in the air. Or you might worry that your anxiety will get so bad that you experience severe anxiety or even a panic attack and completely lose control. Now, I want you to know that having anxiety and these types of thoughts are extremely common. In fact, I can promise you that you're not the only one on the plane tightly gripping the armrests as you're being overwhelmed with anxiety. Now, first, let's address the reason for this. The reason that you're getting anxiety on airplanes is because you're confined to a small space, you're surrounded by strangers, and there's no way to escape and go to a quote-unquote safe place when you're experiencing anxiety. And that's the key right there. There's no escape. You can't get up and simply leave. You can't deboard the airplane. So you are pretty much stuck in that seat until you get to your destination. And that means there's no running away from whatever anxiety or health issue that comes your way. So let's imagine the scenario together. You board the plane and the crew announces that the doors are closed and you're about to take off. The engines roar louder and that familiar wave of anxiety starts creeping in. Maybe your chest tightens and maybe you feel anxiety in the pit of your stomach and your heart starts to beat out of your chest. Okay, so normally in the past, this is the point where your panic takes over. You try to fight it and resist against it, and so you clench your fists, grip that armrest, and you try to distract yourself with your phone. Or you might frantically order a whiskey or a vodka to try to calm your nerves. But no matter what you do, the fear and anxiety feels overwhelming. But we're not going to have that happen anymore. We're going to change our approach. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to implement what I refer to as the fearless approach. And this approach is what I teach on this channel. It is your new approach to anxiety whenever and wherever it shows up. So instead of trying to fight your anxiety and becoming tense and resisting against the sensations, I want you to surrender to them. Yes, put down the weapons and just allow your anxiety in. I want you to treat anxiety like an old friend instead of some enemy that's out to get you. Now, you're probably asking yourself, why in the world would I do that? If I don't protect myself and defend myself, isn't anxiety just going to get worse? But the answer is no. And to understand why, you need to understand what anxiety is. So you must realize that anxiety is simply your body's defense system at work. The symptoms and sensations you're experiencing are because the fight or flight response is engaged. Now, this response is an ancient protective response that allows you to react quickly in the presence of an immediate physical danger. And what happens is when you're on an airplane, you start to have all these worries about being in danger. You're worrying that you'll have a medical emergency or a panic attack, and so your body does the only thing that it knows to do when you're in danger. It activates this ancient defense response. But when the fight or flight response is triggered, it sends adrenaline and cortisol coursing through your body. And what that does is it makes your anxiety worse. The adrenaline makes you feel even more panicked because it speeds up your heart rate, it causes short and shallow breaths, and it causes every alarm bell to go off in your body at once. That is not what we want. We do not want to make our anxiety worse. Instead, we need to approach our anxiety differently. We must acknowledge that we're not in any danger and that we're simply experiencing nervous energy. After all, it is nothing more than stress hormones that's creating all these uncomfortable sensations. They are not dangerous and they're not going to harm you. They are actually just there to protect us. So here's the key. We need to allow our anxiety in. I call this surrendering to anxiety, and it's step number 2 of the fearless approach that I teach. So how do you surrender? Well, what I want you to do is repeat to yourself, I surrender to these anxious sensations. I surrender to these anxious sensations. So if your heart is racing, fine, let it race. If you feel anxiety throughout your entire body, great, let that anxiety be there. And if your hands are tightly gripping the armrest, I want you to relax them. As you do this, I want you to cross your arms and put your hands under your armpits. What that does is it creates this feeling of warmth and security, and that is going to help your body calm down. Okay, so here's the surprising part. When you stop resisting and fighting against anxiety, your body stops hitting the panic button. Panic and anxiety thrives off resistance. It feeds off your fear and your attempts to defend yourself from it. But when you say, I'm not afraid of this, and you surrender, the fear loses its power and the anxiety diminishes. Now, what you're going to find is not necessarily that the anxiety disappears, but rather that the sensations that once felt unbearable quickly become manageable. And soon, you no longer dread flying anymore. You are going to be that person who's casually reading a book or taking a nap. You are going to enjoy traveling again. So make sure you implement these steps and don't hesitate to reach out in the comments below if you have any questions. I hope you have a great trip, and please don't forget to hit the like button and notification button on the way out. I'll see you on the next episode.